Okay, thank you. And we're shortly going to hear about our guest speaker, and we're going to introduce her. But before we do that, we want to recognize some of the other Chabads that are with us. This is an international program. The speaker is all the way from England, and we have a group from Florida, from Pinellas County. We have Rabbi Pinchas Adler and my sister, Rebbe Tzachani Adler is with us. Maybe you'd like to welcome your community. Pinchas?
Pinchas, you want to start? Well, okay, he doesn't want to, but anyways, I wanted to first thank my sister-in-law Goldie and my brother, Rabbi Platkin, who's has an unbelievable Chabad and always been so impressed with them. And so thank you for putting this all together and making this possible. And also I want to thank all our community who's on now. And I hope that you will be just as inspired as I was. I read her book like in one Shabbos and it was great and I couldn't put it down. And I'm sure you'll all be inspired just as much as I am. So thank you all for being here. And thank you again, Rabbi Platkin and Goldie. So welcome.
We also have with us, thank you, Hani. We also have with us the community from on Young Street, our neighbors. And we've done many, many programs together. It's really nice, a great honor to have you together with us today. And maybe you'd like to, we have Rabbi and Rebbetzin Zaltzman, and maybe you'd like to welcome your community.
Thank you, Rabbi Plotkin, and it's great when we've had you speak at events in our shul, as well as your Rebbetzin, Mr. Rebbetzin Goldie. And it's good to have another joint event together with Chabad of Markham, Chabad Romano, and other Chabads outside of Canada. We look forward to an inspiring evening tonight. And I want to thank obviously all those from the JRCC East and all the other JRCCs that are here tonight, as well as everyone joining from whichever community and whichever Chabad you're involved with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And also we'd like to recognize two other communities, Rabbi Levi Shem Tov, Levi and Sarah Shem Tov.
Hi, everybody. And thank you for putting this together. We're looking forward to hearing some wonderful, inspiring words. This is great that a few Chabad houses come together to hear some beautiful ideas, and we're looking forward to hearing all this. Thank you.
Thank you very much to my best brother-in-law. How you doing? Everything okay?
Baruch Hashem. Yeah.
There you are.
Yeah.
I had to spotlight you for a moment there. And we also have with us the famous community from Chabad North, the Romano Chabad community from Richmond Hill, Rabbi and Rebbetzin Bernstein. Are you there now? Hello?
Okay, they're not on yet.
Okay, so they'll get a chance at the end of the program to ask some questions to the speaker.
Okay.
So now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you my Rebbetzin Goldie, who is going to introduce the guest speaker. So,
okay.
It's all yours.
Thank you. And once again, thank you. I think the nicest part of this is having so many Chabad houses together and almost having like a Shluchim's convention going on here. So this is really beautiful. Tonight, we are very fortunate to meet an exceptional woman. As Rebbetzin Adler said, she read the book in one Shabbos, and that was exactly what happened to me. I could not put down your book, Michal. Let me tell you a little bit about Michal and why we're having over 100 or probably 200 people that are going to be joining us tonight. Michal Oshman is head of company culture, diversity, and inclusion, and employer branding at TikTok Europe, Middle East, and Florida. I'm sorry, and Africa. She was formerly responsible for international leadership and team development at Facebook. Throughout her career, she has trained and coached hundreds of tech leaders. She has 3 university degrees in psychodynamic and systemic thinking, sociology, and anthropology. Michal lives with her husband and her 4 children in London, England. Michal, it is a tremendous honor to welcome you tonight. And I know it's not early for you. It's probably around, what, 11:30, 12 o'clock?
12 o'clock, yes.
All right. So tell us, before we get on with our questions that have been coming from the public, as well as some things that we put together, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So let me start from now, this moment. So sorry for my voice. I have a bit of a cold, nothing serious, but I'm sorry I'm maybe not hearing, you can't hear me super clear. And normally my husband helps me with any tech support, but now everyone's sleeping and I'm in the basement. So I've been davening for connection for the next hour, but in case my internet connection drops, can someone just wave or tell me, and I'm going to change between connections. So that's very current now. The house is quiet and I'm fully focused with you. And you mentioned TikTok and the areas that I cover. I wish I covered Florida. You just gave me inspiration to speak with my my manager about. But yes, everything you said is correct. But as we know, that's kind of just the outside. And yes, what you described, Goldie, is, I guess, my biography, my LinkedIn page. But what many people, including the closest to me, did not know for many years, and I just celebrated 46 2 days ago, is what was going on in my life for many years internally. So not what my CV looked like, but what was going inside. And it does feel like a bit of a trip between Chabad houses today. So who needs to get on a flight? We can just travel on Zoom, and it's really beautiful. But in order to connect with hundreds of people on the call now, I wonder whether I should share a bit more personal things about myself to explain why I wrote the book. Okay, so I'm gonna go kind of deep very quickly inside. What is the book? Michael is asking. My book is called, thank you, Michael. And I really liked your joke about NASA in the beginning. The book is called What Would You Do If You Weren't Afraid? And the book is about dealing with fear and anxiety, but also finding joy and purpose through the discovery of the Jewish wisdom. So I discovered something at relatively old age, but what is old today? Older age, I guess. And I wrote a book about it. But in order to explain what I discovered, I want to maybe tell you a little bit about my upbringing. So I'm obviously Israeli. Probably you can tell from the accent. I was born in Israel in the 70s, and I was brought up by my grandparents, who were from all sides Holocaust survivors. But specifically, we lived together with my maternal grandparents and my Savta Chana, grandmother Chana. She raised me. And Savta Chana, during the time of the Holocaust, she was on the way, on the train, on the way to Auschwitz, and she sensed that something very, very bad was going to happen. And she jumped off the train. Of course, it's not as easy as it sounds, but her instinct told her that something bad was going to happen. And she
classes at 8:30, right?
And she jumped. And she injured herself. She was really suffered, but she survived. She survived, but she was very much affected from the Holocaust, of the things that she had seen. Her family killed in front of her eyes, and she told me those stories from a very, very young age. She prepared me for the next Holocaust. For her, it was never a question of will it happen. The question would be, when will it happen? And she prepared me. And that was difficult. I'm sure you can imagine, and I'm sure that on the call there are second and third generation survivors. It didn't help that also during 20 years of my early days, my father was the head forensic pathologist of Israel. He was actually a known figure in Israel, and he was the person that was the first one to jump to terror attacks or any crime or on unnatural death. And for different reasons that I share in the book, I was exposed to death and to the horrible sides of life from a very, very young age. I was a very anxious young girl, but no one knew about this. I have fellow pleasers on this call. For most of my life, I tried to please my grandparents and my parents, not that my parents lived very long after my childhood years. I wanted to make it worth for them all that they've been through, And I tried to be perfect. I tried to be perfect daughter, a perfect student, a perfect sister, a perfect granddaughter, perfect from the outside, as well as perfect from the inside. But inside I was extremely anxious, and every day felt like the last day. I found it hard to function, but at the same time, I was highly, highly functional. At 18, I joined the military. I joined the IDF. I was an officer for 3 years. Speaking of resilience, I don't think I was resilient. I was just managing somehow to survive. And then a bit of a breakdown came after the army, after the tzava, and I started going to therapy. For 15 years, I went to therapy, and I was trying to fix my head through talking therapy, through medication. I got married. I had then 3 children. Baruch Hashem, today I have 4, but I wasn't able to overcome my anxiety. I wasn't able to overcome very, very bad thoughts. And at the same time, I was highly functional. At the age of 38, of course, I'm telling you my life on a speed kind of button, so forgive me for this. It's also not very easy. But at the age of 38, when I was desperate, when I said to my husband, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm ashamed of myself. I have horrible thoughts. I have so much, but I feel despair. I'm hopeless. Will I ever connect with life? And as I said, at the same time, I was highly, highly, highly functional with all those degrees that Rebbetzin Goldie kindly described. And then I made a discovery in a, you can call it magical, cosmic, ashgacha pratit, whatever you choose. I discovered Chassidut. I discovered Chabad. I discovered the Tanya. And those 38 years that were spent looking for solutions, and everywhere outside, I guess, of my heritage, I discovered that there is a beautiful, I would say life-saving, at least in my case, Jewish wisdom. And that's what I'd like to share with you today. I know that amongst the hundreds of people on the call, there are people like me that, well, we each are carrying something inside of us. We are all struggling. We're all looking. And I really liked how you said, Rabbi, in the beginning, Plotkin, you said, being better people. Sometimes we just want to be better people. Sometimes we feel like we're trying just to survive and to make sense of what's going on around us. So when I discovered the Jewish wisdom, I discovered meaning. And that's what I'd like to share with you today.
Thank you, Michal. Can I ask you a few very important questions?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so you say that you've met Chabad, you've internalized a new wisdom. Can you give us 2 examples that resonated with you from this wisdom?
Yes. Oh, that's a very good question. So maybe I should explain my upbringing for a second. So I grew up in North Tel Aviv. Anyone that speaks Hebrew here, it's Tzfon Tel Aviv. It's like a thing. I grew up in a secular household. We were very respectful of our dat, but we never, I guess, practiced Yadut. We never had made Kiddush or kept Shabbat. And for me, Yadut, Judaism was pretty much knowing that I was born into it, but mainly the things from the outside. You know, if a lady is dressed in a certain way or a man is dressed in a certain way, I saw Judaism more from the external. And I had no idea that there was deep, deep meaning internally. And even though we didn't prep this question, I'm really grateful that you're asking me, Goldie, because the first discovery that I made about, as you asked about this meaning, was actually around Pesach. So for me, Pesach was definitely, an event that we got together with my family, and we would eat, the traditional Pesach, Passover food. But I didn't really stop to think about the ideas behind Pesach. And at that time of my life, when I was 38, I mentioned that I was really trying to be perfect. my whole life. And at that specific time of my life, I developed an obsession about my external looks, and I kind of enslaved myself. Now I'm already using Pesach deep meaning. I enslaved myself to anti-aging treatments, and I was doing injections, and I almost couldn't recognize myself. It's very uncomfortable to share this, but that was a fact. And when I discovered that actually Pesach is an extremely spiritual moment where everyone has an opportunity to take a minute to connect to their ego, to connect to their puffiness, to connect those things that are not the essential me, to realize what we're chained to, what we're enslaved to. Often is it's ego, sometimes it's bad thoughts, sometimes it's memories. When I realized that I was really enslaving myself to a certain behavior, and I have the power and the ability to set myself free, that was a huge discovery. Even the fact that we enslave ourselves to things. I love thinking about, the fact that Hashem can get us out of Egypt, out of Mitzrayim. It's very hard to get ourselves out from there. So it was a very spiritual first Pesach that I celebrated when I started studying Tanya and getting to know Chabad.
Thank you, Michal. Wow, and you really open yourself up here, Michal, for many of the women that are sitting on this. This is a struggle that many of us are having with externalities. So I applaud you for being so raw and so open, and I really just thank you from all the women watching this tonight. Okay.
But I just want to say, to keep everything real, it's not that I stopped caring about how I look. I still care about how I look, but I can control this wanting to look in a certain way rather than it controls me. So I just want to normalize, of course, and Goldie, I know you and I are on the same page. It's totally normal to want to care about what you look like inside and outside. But when it goes over that chained kind of level, you know that you're probably not in the best place.
Thank you. Michal, we speak about the Jewish wisdom. Is this only for observant Jews? Is it only for Jews? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Of course. So I wrote the book hoping to connect to the world. Jews, non-Jews, observant, non-observant. And I know often people want to understand, like, where am I? Especially Israelis really like understanding, like, where am I on that kind of observance, I guess, spectrum. So I wrote this book to anyone and everyone, as Rabbi Plotkin was saying, that wants to grow, that is curious about learning the Jewish wisdom, which is a universal wisdom. And I don't know how the world does not know about this. And it's my mission. Goldie, we spoke about this. It's my mission to tell the world. When I worked for Facebook for 7 years, I stood on a big stage and talked about Eshet Chayil in front of all of Facebook's leadership in Europe. Unfortunately, we lost a friend, and she was an Eshet Chayil. And I had to tell the company that she was the Eshet Chayil, and they completely recognized that. So the book is for anyone and everyone that wants to grow, that wants to connect and to discover their neshama, their soul. Until the age of 38, I did not know I had a soul. I didn't know there was a godly mamash part within myself. I thought I was damaged forever because of the things that I had seen in my life and the experiences that I had. So the book has, I guess, knowledge about the Jewish wisdom, but I very much share how I bring it to my everyday life, right? I work for companies like Facebook and now TikTok. I'm a mother of 4 children. I'm a wife. I'm a daughter. I'm a person that struggles with mental health challenges. So my mission is to show how the Jewish wisdom can help us heal ourselves. That's the mission.
I love it. There is idea that you end with in every chapter, and I love it. If you change nothing, nothing will change.
Yes.
Can you take us through a few self-reflection exercises to bring these concepts to life so we can practically include that in our daily life?
Absolutely. So I took that line from Albert Einstein, so I can't give myself any credit. But I believe in the, and also because I'm a coach and I'm a person of tachlis, and I believe that, it's beautiful to have ideas, but, until you bring them to the everyday, there's a risk that it stays ideas and it doesn't become your practice. So I really believe in practicing, and yes, every chapter in the book does end with a couple of pages on practice. So I can give a couple of ideas. And I'm sorry, I know I'm going to share a lot of information, but I'm sure you're with me. So, for example, one of the ideas, the beautiful ideas in Chassidut, and by the way, in case I'm using terminology that's not known for all yet, that's totally cool. And please write in the chat box if there's anything that I'm saying. Thank you for the 2 people that asked before. And anyway, kind of, work with me on the chat if there's anything that you'd like me to elaborate on. But one of the beautiful, I guess, songs or ideas in Judaism is the idea that, we in our lives, and by the way, life was never meant to be, smooth ride or easy, which is something I discovered, and actually struggle, unfortunately, is a vehicle for growth. There's a beautiful song that I love hearing in Hebrew, but obviously it's my mother tongue, but I'm sure that many people know here, which is Gesher Tzar Meod. כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד, והעיקר לא לפחד כלל. So for anyone that's been in any youth program, or I personally sang it a lot in the military when we were doing like basic and quite sophisticated training, and we were just had enough. We used to sing that song and kind of boost our resilience. And the words in English, and I chose to write this in the back of my book because I love it so much. The whole world is a very narrow bridge, a very narrow bridge, a very narrow bridge. And the main thing is to have no fear at all. And yet so many of us feel fear. We fear failure. We feel not being good enough. We fear getting on that bridge. And I recently can see that people are fearing even more through my coaching work and through being connected in different communities. We often want assurances, reassurances that the bridge that we're going to cross, that we'll get exactly what we want, and that we know exactly what it's like on the other side of the bridge. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And when I say a bridge doesn't have to be a big, life-changing decision. It could be, starting to study something, or dating someone, not knowing yet if he or she are the one, or going back to dancing after many years of not practicing, and we're standing in front of that bridge, and we're hesitating again because we want to know exactly what this bridge is going to feel like, and we want assurances that it's going to be okay. And what I discovered about Judaism, and I guess the Jewish story, is that within the idea of being part, of the Jewish nation and the Jewish wisdom, is believing about taking that step forward, and actually taking a step forward, not taking unnecessary risk, but believing and taking that leap of faith. So for example, in the chapter that I talk about crossing a narrow bridge, and I talk about the bridges that I chose to cross, scary bridges. At the end of that chapter, I ask people to grab a pen and paper and to ask themselves, and maybe to ask yourselves tonight, what's the bridge that you're facing now? What is a bridge? Tall, not small, big, scary, less scary? It doesn't have to be scary. But what is that bridge that you're facing now that instinctively, if you give yourself the empowerment, you feel like you need to cross? You feel like at least you need to take the first step. And that's bringing things to practice. So I actually would like to ask you for a minute. I know we're going to go to a next question. maybe you want to grab a pen and paper and say, and write down for yourself, what's the bridge that you're facing now in life? And what needs to happen for you to take that first step, that leap of faith? So that's one example, Goldie.
Okay, so we should give people 30 seconds or
Give people space, yes.
people need some time? Yes. Again, let everyone internalize that. Okay, Michal, you talk a lot about your father and the role that he played in the medical world, and that it frightened you a lot as a child. What role did fear play in your life, and how has it informed who you are today? You might want to elaborate on the things that you saw as a young child and how it sort of developed you. Yeah.
Yeah, so fear, you know, I don't even know, there was so much. From a very young age, I saw death and heard of death. So from a very young age, I was scared that the Nazis were going to come and get me from my bed during the night. And I used to go to sleep holding my bed really, really tight. So they're not able to take me, because I didn't want to cause my grandmother any more pain. And then later on, when I realized the job that my father had, and I had seen, I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable, I'd seen difficult sides, which I assume affected me deeply. I was afraid. I was afraid that I would become, I was afraid that something would happen to me. I was afraid that something would happen to my family. Those were very immediate, fears, and really affected, I guess, my ability to breathe. I even remember, you reminded me now, Goldie, that during the, I think it was the second Intifada in Israel, when it was a very, very tough time. And I think I just started serving in the army there at that time, if I'm not mistaken. I remember getting on buses, and I remember my father always telling me, when you're on a bus, open the window and sit next to an open window, and that reduces, he didn't give me this as advice, but I remember him saying it when he was interviewed. So I always used to get on a bus and quickly open as many windows as possible, and sit really close to the window with uniform, with the weapon. So these are very difficult experiences, and those are my very personal experiences. But people on the call, the hundreds of people with us today, they have their own experiences, and sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's anxiety, sometimes it's sadness. And yeah, sometimes when you think about things in a certain way, you do get, it's really hard to stay positive, and it's really hard to see the good. And as a young child, I remember I was very, very, very well understanding what my father's job is. And I remember at some point, someone was saying that my father conducted autopsy on 40,000 corpses. And I think that number kind of, even though I was young, it kind of, it sunk in. And I remember asking my father, is there a smaller body in the bigger body that never goes away, that stays? And I remember asking him, how is it possible that all the love that I feel to you and to Ima, that it's going to go away when my body goes away? And my father, bless him, he said, we're only flesh, nothing stays after. And that was very saddening. My father grew up to parents that only thought about survival, and he also did not know that we have a soul. Now I tell him about it, and we have very meaningful conversation. But yes, they were hard memories.
Michal, how do you translate what you just said so deeply to our audience, so that they can bring it into their lives, and if they have children? That is huge, to be able to ask your parents, is there a smaller me? And you were looking for him to say, of course, you have a neshama. and you didn't get that, and that just kept anxiety. What could those of us that are watching here tonight with you, how can we transform that into practical layman's terms? Because that's what Chassidus is. I love what you just said, but how can we make it, you could see I'm very practical. Everything is about how to make it real and how to bring it down, right?
I'm with you. I'm also very practical. So I think even taking a step kind of, back, first of all, I do spend time with my husband, with Yair, thinking about what we do with our children. What are the messages that we give our children, and maybe even a bit more, because we are Israelis living in outside of Israel for nearly 20 years, and we realized that things that we took for granted back home, if we don't do them, our kids will grow not really knowing who they are. And that's not preachy. That's completely a decision that we made to bring up our family. So going back specifically to your question, Goldie, I think that my husband and I agreed between us that, first of all, we prioritize growing our children as, let's say, ideally, as mensches, as people with deep values. They know who they are, why they're here, help them find their purpose. And obviously that's work. And let's not pretend, right? Like when you're tidying the house or you have to run somewhere, it's not like I'm sitting every day with my kids on a coffee or a hot chocolate and talking about the neshama, right? But they know through the conversations that we have with them, mostly on Shabbat, that they have a neshama and that they have a role to play in this world. And that role will change as they grow. I have a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 15-year-old. So they're all in the different phases of their lives. I have 2 teenagers, they're going through their own teenager stuff. But yeah, we have these conversations at home. I also share in the book how I was fascinated to learn about the parental advice that King Solomon gives. And no, it's great. I love people are joining, so always it takes a second until muting. That's not a problem at all. So I studied in university. One of my second degrees was actually in psychotherapy and psychoanalysis, etc. And I learned there, they taught me there, that a child is born neutral, that a child is born kind of clean slate, completely neutral, tabula rasa. And then anything that my child becomes, eventually it's on me. Because they are born neutral. If they're whatever they are, it's because normally I failed. That's how a mother often thinks, maybe a parent. And that made me feel really, really anxious. But when I discovered the beautiful advice from Melech Shlomo, from King Solomon, which I think is the first parental advice given ever, I discovered that my job as a parent, and it's not always easy, is to raise my child by their soul, and that actually they arrive to this world not neutral and not a clean slate. They arrive already with a story, with a soul, with a journey that they're going to go on, and that my job, my role as a mother on any good day is to help them navigate their journey and not mine. And that really helps me kind of course correct myself when I'm trying to influence them too much. So listen, Goldie, a lot is in the head, right? A lot of it is like, when you're doing something and you're kind of reflecting what conversation just happened. Did I like, am I trying to impose something on them? Am I curious to understand who they are? Am I looking into their eyes, finding the time to actually look into their eyes, which is the window to the soul? As a child, because my parents were in such survival mode, they couldn't look into my soul. And I know I'm just now starting to read Sha'ar HaBitachon.
Love it.
And if I can join classes, I would really appreciate it, because I feel like it's a book that you need someone. Like I find it not easy to learn by myself. I love learning, but I think I need some help. And I understand, and I'm not an educator, but the importance of that bitachon, right? That thank you, Michael. That that thing that makes you feel grounded, that emunah, that knowing that it's not all on my shoulders, and there's a much bigger story than just myself in this world. So yeah, that's what we're trying to bring to our home, and we have very open conversations at home about these things, and we're highly communicative. I don't know if that's a word in English, family.
So Michal, just on a side note, I teach Shabbat every Tuesday morning, 9:45 on Facebook.
Perfect. Your time morning.
9:45 our morning in Canada. So we'll be friends. And then, okay, but that's a side thing. Okay. So your book is really a self-help book, but with very deep Hasidic concepts infused into it, which is like a departure from the self-help genre in a way which are often more focused on the self and the body. Tell us how you connect to that statement.
144 people watching this now on Zoom.
Can you say, sorry, Goldie, can you say that one more time? Tell me.
Sorry. What's refreshing in your book is that you have a chapter dedicated to making space for others.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on this?
Yes. And Toby, I just want to say thank you for sharing on the chat. I see my private messages, and I see our public messages, and thank you very much. Yes. So you know, Goldie, I don't know if I share this with you, but Goldie is referring to the chapter that I write about tzimtzum, about condensing yourself. And I'll be totally honest, when I was working with my publisher, who had, you know, it's just beautiful seeing all my colleagues who are not Jewish using Hasidut terminology now, and they would say, you know, condense yourself, tzemtzem yourself. It's really nice to see how all of this wisdom can be really applied by anyone that wants to grow. But the idea of tzimtzum, I mean, I find it mind-blowing. I'll try to explain it in my own words, but I'm saying in advance, it's a holy idea and truth. And I forgive anyone who's an educator. Sorry, I apologize to anyone who's an educator and actually teaches this, and you find my explanation, you know, not proper enough. But this is how I tell myself this in my heart and in my head. So the idea of tzimtzum, of condensing yourself and making space for others, comes from the fact of how the world was born. And before we were created, and before the world was created, and before the animals were created, Hashem was everywhere and everything and seen like that. However, in order to create us, his creations, he needed to make space. He chose to make space. And it appears to be as if Hashem condensed himself to take less space, appears to be, in order to make space for us, for human beings, for the world. And as we are created in Tzelem Elokim, how do you say Tzelem Elokim in English? Sorry, these words I'm still learning.
Image of God.
Image of God. So since we're created in the image of God, we have a calling to ask ourselves, what can we learn, and how can we get inspiration from God himself? And I find that fascinating, that in order to build something new, in order to make space for a new creation, God chose to apparently condense himself and take less space. And I connected to that very deeply because as part of my work and living in this world, I realized that we often take too much space, and myself included. We take too much space. We fall in love with our ideas. We don't listen very well often. We're just taking space. So I chose to try when I can to learn how to condense myself and to take less space in order to make space for others. Everyone loves the fact that in the book I talk about making space for my husband, especially his friends. And I share how when we got married, I took over the marriage. I'm sure no one on this call never ever do that. I'm the only one. And I kind of knew exactly what marriage I wanted, and it was needed to be exactly like my parents' marriage. And at some point, my husband made it very clear that unless I condense myself, it's not going to be, that we had to work on this thing together and make space for each other. And that was even though that wasn't an easy experience, it was a very meaningful one. So when I talk about Tzimtzum in the book, I invite people to think about where in their lives, or maybe you on the call could maybe take a minute to think where in our lives can we actually take less space for ourselves and make space for either someone or make space for a new idea, but just make space.
So I was going to ask you, Michal, how did your whole growth in Yiddishkeit affect your marriage, being that, you were raised in a secular home, so was your husband in Tel Aviv, and you've gone on a journey, a beautiful journey, but how did your husband take to it? And I'm sure he saw the concept of tzimtzum, how, listen, any husband would love it when a wife gets that idea. Tzimtzum is beautiful, it's practical. But in other areas, how did your husband internalize the fact that his wife is now on a journey of learning more Yiddishkeit, learning more Chassidus?
Yes. Yes, I just want to say about Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum is also making a space for one of your siblings, making space for one of the children that sometimes gets less heard in the house. And of course, a husband to her wife, or anyone. I just kind of share my personal story with Yair. I'll be honest, I think anyone that is on a similar journey of being in a relationship for a long time, and then one of the couple is bringing new ideas to the home, it's a moment in a relationship, right? It's a moment. One of the reasons I have deep, deep, deep love to Chabad and to the Lubavitcher approach is that Shlom Bayit, the peace in the home, is the most important thing, or at least I chose to hear that that's the most important thing. Shlom Bayit, peace in the home, and between Yair and I. So I always knew that whatever I try to do, whether it's slowly keeping Shabbat or slowly keeping kosher, that I'm not going to gain anything if I do it by myself and he's not with us or with me. There were moments, I'm not going to lie, and I'm sure we will still have moments. But I'm a deep believer in communication and taking step by step, which by the way is a very Lubavitcher approach as well. We're not in a rush. There's a long life ahead of us, please God. But yes, there were moments when, not just for my husband, for my children, I love Shabbat. I fell in love with Shabbat. And I feel like Shabbat saves us now. We both have crazy jobs. We work endless hours. And I really think without Shabbat, I wouldn't be able to take a minute to connect to myself, to my soul, to my family. But you can imagine that starting keeping Shabbat, even if it was just initially Friday night, was dramatic for my family. We never saw that at home. We had no, and by the way, we made up like Kiddush. I think in the first couple of years, we had I YouTubed. I live on Chabad.org. I looked, how do you light candles? What do you say? What do you this? We made lots of funny mistakes. Now they're funny. But yes, it's not easy, but it's possible.
Wow. Michal, Hatzlacha, for you and for all of us. We're always on a journey in life. I want to conclude with one question, and then maybe we can ask if the other shluchim online have a question from their community, or if someone could put some questions on the chat. Would that be okay? Yeah, okay. So you were talking a lot about changes and growth. When a person wants change, whether it's leaving their job or starting something new, how do they know if they're moving toward or moving away from what they truly desire? As a coach, what are some of the questions one needs to ask?
Oh gosh, that's good. Okay, that's a very deep question. And I don't know if we always know, but you're saying, how do I know if I'm running away, escaping, and therefore I might just meet the same, this thing could happen to me again, just in a different scenario, or whether I'm going towards something. I actually think that the metaphor of the bridge is quite helpful in those moments. So, you know, I don't meditate yet. I really want to start meditating, but I think if we close our eyes and we imagine the bridge and we imagine the side on the bridge that we're on at the moment, which I guess at that point is feeling uncomfortable, quiet reflection, Nina, that I do sometimes. So if you're standing on the side of the bridge and you're sitting there, if that place starts feeling very uncomfortable, if you feel like you can't be yourself there, if you feel like you need to pretend, if it feels fake, if it feels not safe, if it feels as an avoidance, then probably it's a time to go towards something. That's at least how I oh my gosh, there's such good advice on the chat. So I guess that could be when you're really reflecting on where you are now and asking the questions, is this my place? You know, Goldie, that I'm really inspired by Viktor Frankl. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe supported Viktor Frankl. Actually, I don't know if he would write The Man's Search for Meaning unless the Rebbe encouraged him to, because he was depressed after the Holocaust. Of course, he was hoping to reconnect with his wife. He survived all those years in the camps and in Auschwitz, only to discover that she was murdered. But Viktor Frankl tells us that even if the most horrific of life situations, like the one in the camps and in Auschwitz, when you know what your purpose is, when you're looking for your purpose, even if you don't know exactly what it is, sometimes it's not mamash exactly, it's the direction towards your purpose. When you start when you start connecting like to who you are, why am I here? I have a role to play. Suddenly, I think that answer about moving towards something or away from something becomes, I guess, clearer. And I just want to say, I know we're going to move to more questions. When I talk about purpose and the way that I understand Viktor Frankl talks about purpose, it's not this big capital P purpose, only the ones that are CEOs or the ones that have 20,000 followers, or, you know, purpose could be being there for your child in a certain phase of your life. Purpose could be doing for your community in a certain stage of your life. Purpose could be educating yourself. You know, that is purposeful. So one of the things that I see with the leaders actually that I work with at work is often they will have big jobs and very dramatic titles. But when I ask them, so what's your purpose, right? What do you find meaningful in life? They're like, don't know. So yeah, I think waking up in the morning and just trying to ask very gently after saying Modani and thanking for this fresh opportunity for a new day, to try and think about what am I going to do here today is it's quite meaningful. It gives me energy, at least.
So I'm going to allow people to start asking questions on the chat. You know, I'm curious, how did it get at work as a coach, as a leadership coach? Did your colleagues realize that you were getting into a new path of Hasidus or Judaism, or did they see like a shift, like a paradigm shift a little bit?
Oh my God, that's a really good question. So I joined Facebook just as I started learning Tanya. This was 8 years ago, and actually the name of the book, What Would You Do If You Weren't Afraid? the name of the book is actually a Facebook mantra, an internal mantra in the company. And I remember telling my colleagues that I, just met them, I said, my faith says that. And it's a very open workplace. And I share in the book how very early in my Facebook journey, actually on the first day when I joined Facebook, my manager came from Dublin to meet me. And he asked me, Michal, what do you care about? And I was in total shock because no manager before that asked me, what do I care about? And I said to him, because I was like not prepared for this, I said, I care about being Jewish. I care about being a mother. And then I freaked out. I was like, why did I tell my boss I'm Jewish? And why did I tell him I have children? Like, he's going to think that, I'm not going to work hard enough. And he said, I don't know anything about Judaism. What does it mean? And I said, well, one thing that it means that there's this thing that I'm doing on Friday night. And I know it's going to look really weird to you because it's in different times. And, because he never met anyone that practiced, keeping Shabbat. But he was such a kind soul, and he was an angel. And every Friday afternoon, he used to write me a message to my phone. He said, Shabbat Shalom, close the phone and get your laptop out of the plug. And it was just beautiful. For 5 years, I got that message every single Friday. So I think what I learned from that is that if I feel comfortable in my own skin, and I'm not saying that I'm there yet, I'll find a way to live my life the way I want to live it.
Wow, Michal, thank you so much. And there are some people are asking about the book. All of the partners that are tonight, hosting tonight, so it's in Florida and here JRCC East and Romano and in Riverdale, we all have your book sitting in the office. And everyone can come and purchase the book. And then, of course, I picked up my book months ago. I picked it up at Indigo. So for those of you who live in Canada, it's available there. And that's how I got hooked on calling you, because I read the book and I loved it, Michal. And it was Amazon also. That's right, of course, Amazon as well. So we have a question here from Nicole Altman.
I love Nicole's question, and it's very relevant for today. Sorry, I interrupted you, Goldie. Do you want to read it out loud?
Michal, read the question, yeah.
Okay, let me open the chat because there's a bit. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nicole. Please, can you explain how you balance it all? High power job, family of 4 kids, beautiful marriage, and beautiful Jewish values. I'm trying my best, Nicole. I have to say that I get asked this a lot. I want to be totally honest with you. Because I feel it so deeply, I think I'm finding the way to bring all of those things together, but I'm definitely not finding balance. I mean, even now, think about it. It's 1 a.m., right? I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. to get the kids to school, but I'm getting so much fulfillment and joy and meaning seeing the hundreds of people, and sorry for being very specific, women on this call, that I suddenly need to sleep a bit less. I don't know if it's sustainable, and I need to think about it. But what I found is that actually I'm feeling more energy now when I'm pretty much feeling I'm living the life that I want to live. I fail a lot, Nicole. I fail as a mom. I fail as a wife. I really care about kibud orim, respecting my parents. And even today, my mom called me something about preparing for bar mitzvah, and I answered in a really not nice way, and I hate, like, it didn't feel good. So I call it like work-life integration rather than balance, because I'm not finding a balance yet. Sometimes I pivot more to my husband, sometimes to my kids, and sometimes like me, keeping things very honest. I just want to say also thank you for the private messages that I'm getting. I'm reading them. I'm just not saying anything because they're very personal.
Okay. Are there any more that you'd like to read? Oh, someone wants to know, where did you learn Tanya? Is it online?
Oh, no, I learned with, so I personally learned with the Chabad community in Golders Green with Rabbi Gordon. But I actually didn't get a chance to tell you this, but when I started reading Tanya, I was learning Tanya, I should say, because it's not just about the reading, it's learning. I was in a very bad place. And when I heard for the first time the words of the Tanya, I kind of burst into, I sound like my kids now. I burst into tears and I couldn't get myself like not emotional for a couple of days. Like anything, it requires a leap of faith. But if you asked me, I would recommend to learn in a group and have like conversations between maybe women in that group and share experiences. I really believe in being vulnerable and not pretending that everything's going really well, because it doesn't. And I think Tanya allows that. It talks about breaking. It talks about despair. Like it's the real deal. So yeah, I hope I answered that question.
Is it possible I ask a question to you directly?
Of course.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Nina. And first of all, the fact that you know who Alfie Khan is, I'm literally jumping for joy. I mean, he's unbelievable. And it's just he's just so not been explored by the world yet. Do you know Naomi Aldor? You probably know her as well. She's just amazing, similar to Alfie Khan. My question is, I'm having an amazing amount of success working as a coach, but it's not enough yet. Like I'm not doing any advertising, like really, no one really knows I'm even doing this work, which is trauma-informed healing using like internal family systems, EMDR, meditation, brain spotting, all these like incredible modalities to help people heal trauma. And it's curing their depression, their anxiety, all that. So but I'm not putting myself out there. That's where my block is. But my clients love me. They're referring me. They're telling me I'm changing their lives like no one else has. But again, I'm hiding, totally hiding.
Okay, so Nina, I'm really glad to hear that your clients love you. I mean, what's better than that? I think if it's anything more specifically on how to get yourself out there, like, advertising, social media, I'm very happy for you to send me a message. I'm on a similar journey myself. I'm trying to get myself out there, exploring the different channels. So very happy for you to connect with me offline, ideally on LinkedIn or on Instagram. No worries.
Rabbi Levi Shem Tov says that you can say that everyone can learn Tanya with their own Chabad Rabbi Rebbetzin. Why didn't I think about that? You don't have to run to United Kingdom. Every single shliach and shlucha, Rabbi Rebbetzin, are teaching Tanya classes these days. So if you love what Michal has given over tonight, if you feel that you want to make that next step and you want to grow personally and in your work and in your life as well, definitely go onto your Chabad's website and see when the next Tanya class is. And maybe we should give every Rabbi and Rebbetzin a minute to tell us when their Tanya classes take place. Because clearly, if Michal Oshman found that this has been transformative and changed her life and her family, and TikTok as well, maybe it's something all of us should look into. Anyone? Rabbi Zaltzman, do you want to tell us about your Tanya classes?
So I actually privately messaged the woman who asked, who's from our community. We have a Tanya class on Zoom Tuesday nights at 8 in Russian.
Amazing. And what about Rabbi Adler?
We had one pre-COVID in person. I had a small study group, but maybe now, if people want, we could restart it.
Wow, amazing. What about Rabbi Shem Tov?
So we had a Tanya class that Sarah, my wife Sarah Shem Tov gave, and with COVID we had to stop it, but it's going to continue. And now we have every Shabbos morning, 8:30 in the morning, we have a Tanya class. It's for men, women, any level of Yiddishkeit, affiliation, non-affiliation, you're all welcome to come. It's from 8:30 to 9, and we all enjoy it together.
Okay.
Okay, Rabbi Bernstein or Toby, are you on? All right. I don't know if I don't hear them. Okay, but if you could definitely look at Chabad Romano, I'm sure they have. So Michal, you really got something started here, huh?
Yeah, I just want to say again, the private messages are coming in. If I don't get a chance to reply to you here, please, if you can, we can continue the conversation on Instagram chat, on LinkedIn, because I'm afraid I won't be able to reply to everyone. I'm very sorry about that, but we can continue chatting. There were a couple of messages about marriage, also private and also to everyone. So I just want to say something about that, because I think maybe it's kind of, touching a number of us, the idea of marriage and like how maybe not to try to kind of copy our parents' marriage, which is kudos to, them, probably those parents did a very good job, but give ourselves space to create our own marriage. I really think it's art. And I have to say, every marriage that is successful, I feel like it's a miracle. And I say that with, all due respect, to how a marriage is really such a journey. But yes, trying to prioritize Shalom Bayit, and the peace in the home. And I'll be honest, I don't always get it right, of course, but at least if that's the guiding light, I feel that it increases the chances to create a marriage that is your individual marriage and not a replica of our parents' marriage. But I'm not an expert in marriage. I only have my own marriage to talk about. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that, Goldie, because a few people messaged. Yes, I'm going to share my email address. Sorry.
Good, yeah. Okay, and I think we said we'll wrap it up at 8 o'clock. Would you like to have just a sort of a grand finale, Michal?
I want to say, I actually want to talk about the organizers for a second, if I may. I had the privilege of being on this call 10 minutes before, and just your energy between you, how you kind of, handed it to each other and welcomed each other to the call. There's so much love to celebrate, and love connects us. So yes, Tanya, yes, community, but also pure love, friendship, the good old smile. I really felt it before the call, and I think it gave me energy to get to 1 a.m. London time and kind of feel high energetic. So thank you for Goldie, who's my contact here, but it was beautiful to meet all the rest of the organizers today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Round of applause. Okay.
Thank you, Michal, so much. Go get a good night's sleep. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a beautiful week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.